All right, let's dive into these phrasal verbs. We've got this fun conversation between Jake and Emma, and they use a bunch of them. They're pretty common ones, too, so, by the end of this, you'll be able to use them like a pro.
I love that they use a dialogue.
Yeah.
Phrasal verbs can be a little tricky, but they're like the secret ingredient to sounding natural and expressive in English.
Totally. And the first one they use is bring up. Like Jake says, he brought up an interesting point in the meeting, but I know there are other ways we can use bring up, right?
Absolutely. Think about how you might bring up like a really tough topic with a friend. Something you've been meaning to talk about. It's all about introducing a subject, but the context, it can totally change the vibe.
Oh, for sure. And speaking of conversations, Jake and Emma actually spend some time trying to, figure out what figure out means.
That's great. It's a good one to figure out there, right?
Dude.
Because we use it for so many things. It's not just about like solving a math problem or understanding a concept. You can use it to describe that process of getting to know someone's personality too.
Yeah. And then we have run into someone, which always makes me think of those times I bumped into someone I know at the grocery store.
Right. That totally unexpected encounter. That's like the classic run into scenario.
Right.
But you can also, run into problems or obstacles along the way. It's that element of surprise that really makes this phrasal verb stand out.
And then there's the phrasal verb that's basically the theme song of procrastination, put off. Jake even admits to doing it with his chores all the time. But is there something about put off that makes us, put things off?
It's a great question. Think about it. Have you ever put off a task because you were afraid of failing? Or maybe it just felt totally overwhelming? Putting off, it often comes from deeper emotions than just, simple laziness.
That's so true. It makes you realize how much phrasal verbs can tell us about ourselves.
I really do.
Okay, so then they move on to people they look up to, which, makes me think of mentors and role models. But can this have like a negative side too?
Oh, definitely. Think about it. We've all heard stories of people who, looked up to the wrong people. It's a good reminder that while looking up to, someone implies respect and admiration. The person we choose to admire can have a huge impact, positive or negative on our lives.
That's such a good point. Okay, now get along with is one we all hope we're good at, right? It's all about those positive relationships that are so important for just about everything.
For sure. Getting along with others isn't just about avoiding conflict. It's a skill that can lead to, deeper connections, better teamwork, and just overall happiness. And if you think about the big picture, it can impact everything from our personal relationships to our success at work.
It's so true. Now, give in is one that always makes me think, is this a good thing or a bad thing? Because it implies a sort of reluctant agreement, like you're giving into pressure.
Right. It definitely makes you think about when it's okay to be flexible and when it's important to stand your ground. Giving in it can be positive if it means compromising to reach a common goal. But, if you're always giving in and ignoring your own needs or values, that can become a problem. It's all about finding that balance.
Exactly. It's that constant inner struggle between wanting to make everyone happy and staying true to yourself, which is tough.
It is.
So Jake also mentions taking after a family member in both looks and personality. What's the science behind that? Is it nature or nurture?
Well, genetics definitely plays a big role.
Yeah.
Our genes determine our physical traits and even some aspects of our personalities. But remember, we're not just products of our genes. Our environment, our upbringing, and the choices we make all play a part in shaping who we become.
It's like that nature versus nurture debate. It's always a mix, right?
It is.
Jake and Emma also talk about coming across something unexpectedly, like finding a hidden gem in an antique store. I love that feeling.
Me too. It's like those little moments of serendipity that brighten your day. For me, I think the most memorable thing I ever came across was a box of old letters in my grandmother's attic. Reading them gave me such a deeper understanding of her life and our family history.
Wow, that's amazing. What a treasure. Okay, let's talk about hold on. It seems pretty straightforward, but I feel like there's more to it.
Yeah, hold on is actually pretty interesting because it has both literal and figurative meanings. Like we can hold on to something physically,
right?
But we also hold on in a temporal sense when we're waiting for something.
So whether you're gripping a railing or patiently waiting your turn, it's about maintaining control either physically or emotionally.
You got it. Now back out is a tricky one because it brings up those sticky social situations. It's about withdrawing from a commitment or an agreement. And that can be tough,
Yeah.
because we don't want to disappoint people.
It makes you think about the etiquette of canceling plans. When is it okay to back out of something? And when is it, not okay?
It really comes down to communication and honesty. If something unexpected comes up or if your circumstances genuinely change, it's important to communicate that clearly and, as early as possible. But if you're constantly backing out of commitments, well, that can damage relationships.
So true. Okay, breakdown is next. And this one can be both literal and figurative, like a car breaking down or a person having a breakdown from stress.
Right. It's a good reminder that we all have limits. When we break down, it's a sign that we need to pause, reassess, and seek support.
So how can we help someone who seems to be on the verge of a breakdown? What can we do?
Active listening is so important. Just be there for them. Let them know you hear them. And offer practical help if you can. Sometimes just being present for someone without judgment can make all the difference.
Absolutely. And then we have chip in, which Jake and Emma use when they're talking about splitting the cost of a meal. But I know chipping in can go beyond just money, right?
Oh, for sure. Think about all the ways you can contribute to a team project or even your community. You can chip in with your time, your unique skills, resources, or even just, offering a listening ear.
It's about that sense of community and shared responsibility.
Exactly.
Finally, we have get over, which is something we all have to do at some point in our lives. Emma mentions taking months to get over a breakup, which shows how challenging it can be.
Yeah. It's important to acknowledge that healing takes time. There's no quick fix for getting over loss or disappointment. Allow yourself to feel those emotions. Lean on your support system and prioritize self-care.
What are some other things that people can do to help themselves get over a setback?
One thing that can be really helpful is, try to shift your perspective. Instead of dwelling on the negative, try to find the lessons learned and focus on the positive aspects of your life.
That's great advice. And with that, we've covered the first set of phrasal verbs from Jake and Emma's conversation. Stay tuned for part 2, where we'll delve into even more examples and uncover those nuances that can take your English fluency to the next level.
Back for more phrasal verbs.
You know it! We left off with Jake and Emma talking about all the things they're looking forward to. It's such a positive phrasal verb, don't you think?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
It really is. It's about that anticipation and excitement for something good that's coming up. Like a vacation or a concert or...
it's a weekend.
Exactly.
Cool.
And, research has actually shown that having something to look forward to can boost happiness and motivation.
So it's literally good for us to have things to look forward to.
It is.
I love that. Okay, so what's next on our phrasal verb adventure?
Well, Jake and Emma carry on with their discussion, which is another way of saying they, continue talking.
Right. But I feel like carry on is often used in a broader sense, too. Like, carrying on a legacy or a tradition.
You're right. It implies a certain persistence, a sense of keeping things going, despite challenges or obstacles.
Speaking of challenges, I've definitely had my share of arguments where I needed to make up with someone. That's another one Jake and Emma use.
And it's a great example of how one phrasal verb can have multiple meanings. We can make up a story. We can make up a bed. Or we can make up with someone after a disagreement.
It's like makeup can be about creating something new or restoring something that was broken.
Exactly. And in the context of relationships, making up often involves, forgiveness and empathy.
So important. Jake then mentions going through a tough time, which makes me think about how we use go through to describe all sorts of experiences, both positive and negative.
Yes, going through something implies a process, a journey. It could be going through a training program, going through a breakup, or even going through a personal transformation.
It's about navigating those ups and downs that are a part of life.
Exactly. And speaking of navigating, Jake and Emma then talk about turning down an invitation.
Ooh, that can be a tough one. Sometimes you want to be polite, but also, honest about your own needs and limits, right? Turning down something requires assertiveness and clear communication. You mentioned in your notes that you sometimes struggle with saying no. Maybe we can explore some strategies for politely declining requests later on.
Oh, that would be awesome. Okay, so moving on. They set up a time to meet later.
Set up is another versatile phrasal verb. We can set up a meeting. We can set up a tent. We can even set up a business.
It's about establishing something, creating a foundation.
And sometimes setting things up can lead to, interesting outcomes, like a chain reaction.
Ooh, like dominoes.
Exactly. Now, Jake and Emma discuss working out at the gym, but we also use workout to talk about solving problems.
So whether you're working on your physical fitness or tackling a mental challenge, workout implies effort and a desire for a positive outcome.
It's about finding solutions and achieving goals.
Then we have count on, which is such an important aspect of trust and reliability.
Absolutely. When we say we can count on someone, it means we believe they'll be there for us. that they'll follow through.
It's about having faith in someone's dependability. And that sense of security is crucial in any relationship, whether it's personal or professional.
For sure. So Jake and Emma then discuss how a particular event turned out.
Turnout is all about the outcome, the result of something.
Yeah.
It could be a positive outcome, a negative outcome, or even a surprising outcome.
It's like saying, and here's what happened.
Right. Sometimes the way things turn out is exactly what we expected. And other times it takes us completely by surprise.
And then they start talking about growing up, which always makes me think about how much we change and evolve over time.
Growing up isn't just about getting older physically. It's about maturing emotionally, developing our values and gaining a deeper understanding of ourselves and the world around us.
It's a lifelong process, really.
Absolutely. We never stop learning and growing.
True. But unfortunately, growth often involves, setbacks and disappointments, like when Jake mentions letting down a friend.
Right. Letting someone down is about failing to meet their expectations, which can damage trust and create feelings of guilt or regret.
It highlights the importance of communication and being mindful of how our actions impact others.
Definitely. Then we have finding out some interesting news.
Finding out is all about discovering new information, uncovering the truth.
It could be something small, like finding out what's for dinner, or something life-changing, like finding out the results of a medical test.
It's about satisfying our curiosity and expanding our knowledge.
And then Jake and Emma pick up their conversation where they left off.
I feel like pick up is another one of those phrasal verbs that has like a million different meanings.
It really does. We can pick up an object. We can pick up a skill. We can even pick up a bad habit.
It's about acquiring something, whether it's physical or intangible.
Exactly. And finally, Jake and Emma point out something interesting they noticed.
Pointing something out is about drawing attention to it, highlighting it for others to see.
It could be pointing out a mistake, pointing out a beautiful view, or even pointing out a potential solution to a problem.
It's about sharing our observations and insights with others.
And with that, we've covered even more phrasal verbs with Jake and Emma.
We're back for the final part of our deep dive into phrasal verbs. Jake and Emma have a few more to share with us as we wrap things up.
They do. They start by going over their plans for the day, which is something we often do, when we want to make sure we haven't forgotten anything important.
Right, like double checking everything. It's kind of like when you go over your notes before an exam.
Exactly. And speaking of important events, Jake talks about showing up for a friend who was going through a tough time.
That's a good one.
Yeah.
Because showing up can be about so much more than just physically being present, right? It's about offering support, being there for someone emotionally when they need it most.
It really is. It's about being that reliable presence, both physically and emotionally.
Okay, so then they talk about having to put up with a noisy neighbor. Yeah, I've been there.
We all have, right? Those situations where we just have to put up with things that are, less than ideal. It could be a long commute, a difficult coworker, or even just like bad weather.
It's about tolerance and resilience. Finding ways to cope with those little annoyances that are just a part of life.
But sometimes those annoyances can actually spark our creativity. Like when Jake and Emma have to come up with a last-minute solution to a problem.
Yes. Coming up with something is all about using your ingenuity. Thinking outside the box. It's those moments when we're forced to be resourceful that often lead to the most innovative solutions.
I love that. And sometimes those solutions involve, looking after others, which is another phrasal verb they use.
Right. Looking after someone or something implies care and responsibility. It could be as simple as looking after a houseplant, or as involved as, looking after a family member.
It's about demonstrating that you care, whether it's through acts of service, providing support, or just simply being present.
And then despite those little hiccups along the way, they decide to just go on with their day, which I think is a great reminder that sometimes you just have to keep moving forward.
Exactly. Go on can mean to continue or to persevere. It's about, not letting those challenges or distractions stop you.
And before they part ways, they decide to check out a new restaurant they've heard about.
Ooh, fun. Checking something out always implies a sense of curiosity and exploration to me.
It does. It's about gathering information, making a decision, or just simply experiencing something new.
And sometimes after checking something out, you realize it's not for you. And that's when we might have to, give up on an idea or a project or even a relationship.
Giving up can be a tough decision, but sometimes it's the best one.
It is. It's about recognizing when to change course, try a different approach, or simply let go of something that's no longer serving you.
And finally, they discuss how they deal with stress, which is something we all have to do.
Oh, for sure.
Yeah.
Everyone has their own ways of dealing with challenges. It could involve problem solving, seeking support, practicing self-care, or finding healthy coping mechanisms.
It's about being proactive and finding what works for you.
Absolutely. And sometimes dealing with those situations requires us to carry out a plan.
Yes. Carrying out a task or a plan, it implies action and completion. It's about taking those steps to achieve a goal.
Well, I think we've covered a lot of ground today.
We've explored so many phrasal verbs with Jake and Emma, and hopefully you've learned a lot about those subtle nuances of meaning, the importance of context, and how these little phrases can really enrich your conversations.
Remember, language is all about expression and connection. The more you explore and experiment with phrasal verbs, the more confident and fluent you'll become.
So keep practicing, have fun with it, and don't be afraid to make mistakes. That's how we learn.
Exactly. And who knows, you might even, come across some new favorites along the way.
That's a great point. And on that note, we'll wrap up this deep dive. Thanks for joining us, and we'll catch you next time.